In today's episode of What Kids Ate, we're diving into the food world of children during World War II rationing. Where did they get their vitamins? Did they still have sweet treats? And what exactly did they miss out on while their parents were away fighting? Let's find out. The Second World War was one of history's darkest chapters, claiming over 100 million military personnel and between 40 to 85 million civilian lives. Families everywhere faced food shortages, soaring prices, and strict rationing. While some households managed better than others, children often bore the brunt of malnutrition. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war, and by May 1942, ration books were handed out across the US. Americans weren't strangers to rationing, having done it during World War I, but this time, the system was far stricter. Every family received a ration booklet containing red food stamps. Shoppers had to give up a stamp for each rationed purchase, ensuring stores couldn't sell beyond their government allotment. Colors indicated food type, red for meats, others for canned and shelf-stable goods. Children even had their own booklets, with stamps valued at only half of the adults. Trading stamps illegally could land you 5 years in prison. Still, people hoarded them, fueling a thriving black market where items, even watches, shoes, and shockingly babies, were exchanged for ration coupons. So what foods were rationed? Meat was limited throughout the war, with the worst shortages between 1943 and 1945, when 80% of beef and 60% of pork were shipped overseas. Sugar was another critical loss since Pacific plantations were cut off. Americans were urged to use honey and maple syrup as alternatives. Butter, milk, eggs, cheese, bread, and gasoline were also tightly controlled. Families received a set number of points each week. Run out early, and you were stuck until the next distribution. People bartered stamps among themselves to stretch supplies, but once they were gone, so was your access to meat and dairy for months. Yet surprisingly, many foods were not rationed. Canned fruits and vegetables actually grew in popularity, since farmers were paid more to process crops. Factory-working women needed easy-to-store food, so preservation methods like drying, freezing, and pickling became essential. Wheat was abundant, transforming into breads, pastries, and cakes. Corn became corned beef. Oats turned into cereals and oatmeal, and soybeans produced oils, milk, cheese, and livestock feed. Rice was rare, seized by Japanese control of production. Nuts, beans, and peanut butter became protein staples, especially for school children. Victory gardens provided vital fresh produce, though poor storage meant vitamin loss, leading to illnesses like scurvy, rickets, and anemia. To counter this, the government worked with food producers to enrich flour, milk, cereals, and bread with vitamins and minerals. Labels were even color-coded, A for vitamins, B for minerals. Children received special consideration in feeding programs. School lunches were free for those under 16, with teens getting larger servings. Low-income families received free milk. Breakfast initiatives like the Child Nutrition Program ensured children had at least one solid meal daily, eventually expanding into the National School Breakfast Program, serving 7 million kids. The school milk and special milk programs provided discounted or free milk to both public and private school students. There was even the Area Girl Breakfast Program, feeding 31,000 teenage girls to keep them nourished and away from trouble. Rural kids, especially farm children and those of migrant workers, were served through emergency nutrition plans. Despite these efforts, hunger persisted, and neighbors often pooled rations to bake cookies or share scarce food for special occasions. To save resources, the government discouraged parties with cakes and ice cream since they consumed precious sugar, flour, butter, and eggs. Families often skipped birthdays or swapped cake for simpler treats like popcorn balls, caramel apples, taffy, or fudge. Candy was rationed too, but drugstores sold 1 ounce per customer weekly, enough for a child to savor a small sweet on Saturdays. Many, however, never tasted such luxuries. When the war finally ended, celebrations erupted. In New York City, over 8 million people filled Fifth Avenue for parades and music. That night, families listened to President Truman announce victory in Europe. In one home, a boy asked his father if he could finally eat his sugar rations. His father said yes, and the boy emptied the cupboard, devouring it all. When his mother came home to find nothing left, the boy's only reply was, "The war is over." Families feasted, slaughtered pigs, and celebrated returning soldiers. Victory gardens continued to sustain households, with children stepping up as the main caretakers of crops. Boys hunted and fished while girls cooked and sewed. In 1943, the Office of War Information published Our World is Your World, telling the fictional story of Tommy, a London boy living through the Blitz. With his father in the army and his mother a nurse, Tommy shared how he and his sister slept in basements during bombings, cared for stray animals, and grew attached to a pet rabbit named Peter Cottontail. Sent to the countryside for safety, he enjoyed fresh eggs, milk, and fruit until he returned to London and discovered rationing had finally lifted. Thanks for watching. See you next time with other topics of life during war.